Quick disclaimer, I am not complaining about the current state of SL, but more so the community. Current SL, like I'll be saying a lot, is its own game, and quite different from older versions. It does well in what demographic it's currently trying to attract, and while I personally like older versions of SL and aspects to it better, current SL is good in its own way, and I think I'm just out of its current demographic now. This video is going to be a bit different from my usual videos, because not only do I want to touch on facts, ideas of the general community, and whatnot, but my own personal opinions as well. It might be a bit more ranty, and I do apologize for such. This video has been something I've been wanting to release ever since I started making that lighting video, so it's been quite a while. It's definitely been something plaguing my mind that I've wanted to say. SCP is a game that has gone over many changes over the years, drastically different from what the game was initially. What started out as a simple indie game has grown to have various mechanics that all combine together to create modern SL. Old versions of SL and new versions of SL have vastly different aspects to them, that not only include the game itself and the mechanics, but the community that played it. With such big differences, it's only natural that somebody who was attracted to the game for a specific reason, and that reason has dissipated, failed to be expanded upon, was changed or removed, causes some players to start complaining about how they liked older versions or aspects of older versions more than newer versions. Yet, it seems to be a serious taboo amongst the community to like old SL, or aspects of. According to the community, you're just seeing things through rose-tinted glasses. Everything is nostalgia, and you never liked old SL, and there is nothing to take away from it. But why? As I just said, these two were vastly different, and ultimately it's an unrealistic expectation to not expect a singular person to genuinely like old SL. Well, before I dive into that, I want to dive into some reasons why I, as well as many others, liked old SL. To justify the liking of old SL and cover up once and for all, no, it's not always someone seeing things through nostalgia goggles, but some people genuinely liked and miss old SL. The flow of games and how they played out was vastly different compared to now. Looking at current SL is a very action-packed and FPS-driven game. Humans are so much more of a threat than SCPs due to how somebody who has mastered the meta can easily fill you with lead within a second, giving you little to no reaction time. There are also plenty of items that make somebody hold a huge advantage over other players. Each and every round is fast-paced, requires the utmost focus because a singular second of being distracted can mean death, and requires you to have to jump the gun, because if you leave even a second for hesitation, another player will take action without giving you another second to react. This fast-paced and always action-driven gameplay can let you easily feel burned out if that isn't your gameplay style. Each round is constantly and continuously demanding, requiring you to try your best, get the best loot, and do things the quickest. Because if you don't, not only will other players, causing you to be at a disadvantage, but you won't make any impact on how the round lays out. Trying hard and getting the best loot possible is how you make an impact. If you play slow, you are going to fail to make an impact. And making an impact on how the round plays out is part of what is fun. Failing to have any influence over the round sucks. It feels like you didn't even play the game and just wasted 15 minutes. Even when players try their best, get the best loot, and do things the quickest, many fail to hold influence over the round, which just feels awful to have played a 20-minute round and not have done a singular thing that changed how it played out. You compare this to old SL, where slow-paced gameplay was pretty average and viable. Going slow or at your own pace wasn't a death sentence, and didn't mean you were severely disadvantaged as you play. You could be lazy, slow, and because less of the player base was tryharding and abusing mechanics, and more players just played for skits, seeing an enemy class didn't always mean death. There was a chance that people would want to let things play out to see if they could become a funny moment. You didn't always have to jump the gun or move fast, because not only were other people going slow for the most part, but again, people gave a chance for a funny skit to play out instead of killing somebody immediately. Which, don't get me wrong, while it still happened back then, yes, less than now. The amount of times I get shot on sight now outnumbers when I started playing, tenfold. You didn't always have to try your best or get the best items, because even without trying your hardest, you could make an impact over the round and could stand some chance. Influencing the game was not a hard task to do, even as a bot. You could try hard, of course. There was plenty of room to play competitively, but it wasn't a requirement. You could do these things that current SL so heavily encourages and reinforces, but it wasn't the only way to play, as well as to make an impact. The game was very community-driven, where people stayed and played for laughs, not to try hard. The community has also changed pretty significantly. Old SL, and when I started playing, had a much more laid-back and less serious community. Players played not only for the game and to win, but to laugh at the funny community, silly nature of the game, and the skits that were constantly achieved. One of my most fond memories of this game was going on strike with another player as a facility guard, not even playing the game. We just goofed off an entrance away from all the action, but that's how funny the community was. So funny that I wasn't even playing the game, but just chatting and goofing off with this dude. Tryhards and sweats back then were such a minority. Most players were chill and not trying to win constantly or as a sole goal, but to also just goof off. The pace of the game was slow, making it enjoyable and easy to do skits. Players didn't always try to get to places as fast as possible or do things as quickly as they could, because part of what made this game was the community, and just the ability to goof off with it. The game was structured around not trying your hardest. It was common for people to not take the game seriously, and be fine with throwing their life or really good runaway just for a laugh. This was golden, when the majority of the community was just goofing off with people and realizing the silly nature of the game. In current SL, while this still exists, it's turned from a majority to less, if not a minority. It turned from being with strangers, joining any server you found funny and laid-back people, to much more only being accessible when you play with friends or in a server dedicated to a specific community, as the average SL player is a competitive player now. And even in those servers dedicated to a specific community, most of them are infested with these game-altering plugins that just make this game an even more fast-paced and unpredictable mess, which I personally don't find appealing, as well as others. Doing these skits and bits just lets other people progress majorly, letting them get major advantages. This game allows for such, where you can get huge competitive advantages against players that make even another skilled player falter under what you have, let alone an inexperienced or new player. If you aren't the constantly aware and trying player that this game needs you to be, you fall behind. Players get better loot that just outweighs what you can do with yours. Tryharding and sweating is so much more prevalent now, and encouraged, as it heavily gives you an advantage. Less to little players throw away their lives for a laugh, as less people play to goof off now, but to play competitively. Solely. That's what a lot of the current community finds fun, playing with this fast-paced competitive playstyle. The pace of the game is much quicker and requires you to be quicker, which is also because of changes to this game that have encouraged this fast-paced and competitive playstyle. But the community is what really puts the pin in the coffin. Players constantly try to get the best loot every game, do things the quickest, and kill people the fastest. Why do you think 914 camping is such a problem now? It's because it gives you the best loot and the best chance of winning for literally no negative side effect. Nobody cares that it's basically just disengaging from the game and its community because they aren't playing to laugh with the community, they're playing to win and to play competitively. If you haven't been experiencing 914, wow, I wish I was you. Almost, if not every time I launch this game and play, without a doubt, one round there is going to be somebody who camps 914. And only seeing one is rare. I much more often see more than that. Also, this is all coming from somebody who currently plays on a vanilla server that doesn't have the biggest name for itself. New players from various parts of the unfiltered community come into the server all the time. And while we get a lot of new players, we also get a lot of competitive powerhouses, people who come to tryhard and play with the now competitive nature of the game. This game is taken very seriously and competitively now, and many players of the community don't play for a laugh, but to solely sweat and win. I mean, this is the type of players this game attracts now. People who will make their graphics the worst possible to have the most optimizable graphics and performance to sweat on. This isn't a shame if you play like this. I literally couldn't care less, go at it. But it's just an example of how the current community will take awful graphics just for a bigger and better competitive advantage. I played this game for SCPs. It's the only one like it in the SCP genre. I stayed for the community, as it was laid back, funny, and skits were achieved every round, and gameplay didn't require you to bring everything to the table every round. A lot of other people joined for the same reason and stayed for the same reason. This game's prominent factor was how goofy the game was, how funny the community was, and how it was an SCP game that included FPS, not an FPS game that included SCPs. Now, this game leans so much more into FPS, and it attracts players like that. The demographic of this game appears to be different now, where more people are joining to take part in the competitive gameplay and tryhard. Also, a lot of changes to this game just seem so out of place in an SCP game, such as horizontal recoil, bullet spread, and the recoil debuffs. Sure, all of this is fine in human versus human battle, and can make for some cool FPS, but when going against SCPs, it's always just felt so out of place, unnecessary, and annoying. Which SCPs are like a fundamental piece to the game that takes up 50% of it. These weird FPS changes feel so out of place in the broad scale of the game when you consider SCPs. FPS feels so much more taken into consideration over other factors of the game that attracted people to the game back then. These changes aren't bad by any means, they just feel out of place and don't really appeal to that old part of the community. I feel like this game is going down an FPS shooter path, which is not a problem, but just not what made it so appealing to a lot of people who joined the community originally. I don't feel like this game offers its community anymore, but a strategic FPS shooter game that includes SCPs on the side. I feel like that's the attraction the game has, and the demographic is competitive players. And hey, people play for this FPS gameplay, so who am I to judge? Considering this game as an FPS game, it excels in that, excusing some problems with camping, round stalling, and whatnot. I simply, as well as other people, just miss the old, more community-driven SL, where majority of players were just goofing off and not trying their best. and just played to be silly and goof off. Instead of now, where, while that still happens, feels so much more a minority than a majority. I think it's such an unrealistic expectation to have that the early community this game built, due to how laid back and funny the community was, which has turned now into a lot of tryhards and fast-paced gameplay, to start disliking the current SL, as well as a lot of changes they're making that promotes this tryharding. There are old aspects to SL that make it enjoyable and a charming experience. A lot of changes to this game fail to expand upon the community-driven part, but instead expanded upon the FPS, which, while there's no problems with that, it's not everyone's gig. A lot of old SO players were attracted for the silly gameplay and laid-back community, so it's understandable they might like older versions that included less complex and competitive FPS systems, rather than the FPS-hungry gameplay currently. Why can't you say you like things about old SL without people getting mad? Why is this such a controversial thing to say? Why is it such a taboo? Well, because the old SL was overall worse. It had more bugs, a lot less direction, and a whole lot less polish. I think a lot of people hear, I like old SL, or old SL is better, and think about all the bug fixes, polishing, and good changes that Northwood has made to the game, and get offended. Yes, old SL was infested with problems, with gameplay, balance, and whatnot, but these aren't the only things that contribute to what makes SL SL. Like I've been saying in the video, there is so much more to it. There's a lot of minute things that I didn't even bring up in this video, because they're just too small to talk about in broad segments. New SL being polished doesn't take away from old SL being good and having good aspects to it. Sure, old SL is overall worse, you are absolutely correct there, but that doesn't mean there's nothing to take away from it. I think it's such a weird thing to be territorial about, being butthurt other people like older versions of SL. It's such a weird thing to basically gaslight people into thinking they never liked it. And it's all just a false memory driven by nostalgia. It's not that worthy to get so butthurt over. Let's face it, the game's demographic has changed. Less people play to lay back and goof off, and more people play to let out their competitive nature. Changes have been made to this game that add various mechanics, increasing its complexity, contrasting to the old, simpler SL. There is no issue with both of these, and it boils down to what people enjoy. You can't just not expect that due to how much this game has changed, both in how simple and competitive it is, to not start pushing people away from the game. You can't combat every single person who says they like old SL with the same invalidating excuse of, you're just blinded by nostalgia. Old SL has good factors to it. You can't just not expect that the community early SL built, due to how laid back and silly the community was, as well as how simple and straightforward the gameplay was, to start disliking the new, always action-driven, fast-paced, and always demanding gameplay. Yes, there are times when you're just blinded by nostalgia is a valid critique, but not every single case. It just waters down the meaning of it, and I'm honestly tired of hearing it because it's applied anywhere and everywhere. It just ruins how an argument comes across, at least in my opinion. This video and what I've been saying isn't a complaint to how Northwood handles their game, even though I wish they went down a different path. It's to the community. The community is so unaccepting of people who say they like old SL, and I see it all the time. Heck, I've gotten my fair share of it. I just find it weird, I guess. People just want that old SL that wasn't this shooter-orientated game, but a game that was powered by its engaging and fun community. I don't understand why the community has to be toxic in this regard, and very unwelcoming of that opinion. It surely doesn't make you feel like you're a part of the community. You know, for this video basically picking apart how I no longer enjoy this game at its core, why do I still critique and play it? You know, nothing has ever been critiqued before by people who like it and want it to do better or be better. Well, there are plenty of reasons. One is I just have a genuine love for this game and desire to see it do good. Sure, my love for it has dwindled down over the years by how unaccepting and unwelcoming I've seen the community behind it can be, as well as the game losing its soul and what made it so appealing to me in the first place, but I still have a genuine desire to see it do good. Another big reason is I am a co-owner for the server named the Plaguehouse. The Plaguehouse is run by me and the server owner, two people who miss this old SL where the majority of the players were laid back and able to make funny skits. That's why in our server, we have rules against overly competitive gameplay. Our server is a server for people who miss that old SL, where people played not solely to win and sweat, but to also have fun and goof off. A server that has very minor quality of life plugins, so the game isn't this unpredictable mess of game-changing plugins. The community we've built and the friends I have made along the way that play on this server keep me playing, and without these factors, I wouldn't play this game. If I had started playing this game as of recently, I have a strong feeling that I would have had 10 hours in this game before I uninstalled and never touched it again. It's hard to get into the game as it's so fast paced. Things aren't explained well, neither in game or really anywhere else, and if you don't find a server you enjoy and you feel like you fit into as a community, you don't play. In conclusion, current SL is fine. Although it has some fundamental problems, so did old SL, if not more. At the end of the day, old SL and new SL have their own appeal. There are valid reasons to like old SL, so no, not every single person talking about liking old SL is seeing through rose-tinted glasses. They are both good games in their own way. While current SL definitely has more polish, bugs fixed, etc., old SL has its charm and aspects to it that people liked. Older versions allowed for slower, more relaxed gameplay, where players could engage in funny bits and skits without constant pressure to perform. It was a fun game to turn your brain off to after a long, stressful day, and have a laugh. Current versions require fast-paced, competitive FPS tactics, favoring quick reflexes and sweaty strategies, needing to memorize mountains of information to perform efficiently. The community has transformed from a majority of laid-back players focused on fun and humorous interactions to a more competitive player base that prioritizes winning and efficiency. This shift has changed the overall tone and environment within the game. The player demographic has also shifted towards those seeking competitive FPS gameplay, rather than the original appeal of SCP-themed humor and community interaction. There's nothing wrong with both of these, and it boils down to what you enjoy. You're Just Blinded by Nostalgia is a good way to just invalidate people, and not really get them to change their opinion, but just anger them. Trying to convince them it's all a lie they made up in their head isn't a true argument against every person liking old SL. You surely can't convince me. You can't convince me that all the nights I spent laughing with this game, laughing at the funny community, enjoying going against and playing as SCPs is all nostalgia. You can't convince me it's all a fake story that I've made in my mind, and I'm seeing things through rose-tinted goggles. This is why I call this community unaccepting to a degree. Valid criticisms fly towards the game and how this game used to feel like a more relaxed experience and felt like it had more soul, and people feel the urge to just invalidate it or not accept it as real criticism. It's a shame, really, and separates people from the community. At least for me personally, I've never quite felt accepted and belonging to the community due to having an itch for the old SL. At the end of the day, this is the path that Northwood went down. A shooter game. That selling factor isn't its community, but its intriguing FPS gameplay. While I wish it was different, and this game was just expanded upon to still be this laid-back, silly game, it is what it is. I don't think it can be undone what has been done, and I don't think reverting what has been done will fix anything either. I just wish things played out differently, and this game went down a different path. I don't believe that this game will steer itself around, and go down the path that I, as well as many other players, wish it would go down, but I do hope. Maybe some way, someday, there could be a way to get that old experience back, refreshed as a new and more content-packed experience. Until then, that's what the Plague House is for me. Shameless plug, but if you feel the same way and just wish you could relive Old SL's community, swing by the Plague House. Me and the server owner are genuinely trying to make a refreshing, laid-back experience devoid of all this tryharding. We would love to see new people's faces who miss this old experience. We want a server where people can just turn their brains off and have fun, to play for a laugh. Try it out if you feel like it. That's all I have to say. Peace out.